G'day guys, Blake here with another video, and today I'm going to run through 7 of the most dangerous aquarium fish that we have within our hobby. So let's jump straight into the video. Okay, so the first one I'm going to talk about is really common here where I am in Australia. I'm not sure about overseas. It's the stonefish or the bullrout, which is commonly sold as the freshwater stonefish. Now, stonefish are recognized as one of the most venomous fish in the world, particularly the reef stonefish. Now, stonefish are a predator that are incredibly well camouflaged. They find their prey by staying really still, but what happens is people accidentally step on them all the time, not realizing that they are in fact not a stone or a rock as the name suggests, but they're a fish, and they'll inject venom into your foot, at which point you will have a terrible day. If you accidentally step on a stonefish, the pain is described as immediate, excruciating, and can even last multiple days. In fact, it's possible to go into muscular paralysis, have difficulty breathing, go into shock, or even in some cases die due to cardiac arrest. All that said, you can buy a bullrout in Australia for about $20, and they're really commonly kept in aquariums. Obviously, you're a lot less likely to step on one when they're in an aquarium, but even still, you've got to be very careful moving things around, you know, shuffling some hardscape or whatever, you might accidentally graze up against one. So you do still definitely have to take care, but bullrouts or stonefish are a perfect one to start off this list. Next family of fish that are dangerous but often kept in aquariums are pufferfish. Now, I'm sure we've all seen pea puffers that we know and love. We've probably seen the massive Mabu puffers that get around, especially if you watch channels like Aquarium Co-op. You might be familiar with Amazon puffers, Fahaka puffers, or maybe even some of the more unique puffers like dragon puffers or hairy puffers. With that said, there are all sorts of different types of puffers, from saltwater to brackish to freshwater, but all of them have a toxin which I'm going to pronounce as tetrodotoxin. Now, it's believed that tetrodotoxin makes them taste terrible to predators and leaves sort of a foul taste in the water. So that's a defense mechanism for them. But actually, humans, as crazy as we are, we sometimes choose to eat them as a delicacy, which if you've ever seen the episode of The Simpsons, you'll know all about fugu.
Fugu? If it is cut improperly, it's...
Yes, it is poisonous, potentially fatal, but if sliced properly, it can be quite tasty.
So even if we are crazy enough to keep puffers in our aquariums and even eat them, the tetrodotoxin is actually 1,200 times more dangerous to humans than cyanide. And there are actually a number of deaths every single year from people consuming fugu. In fact, some puffers even carry enough toxin to kill up to 30 humans. And there's no known antidote. But then again, who can say no to the adorable face of a puffer? But at least the next time you're looking at your pea puffers, which you've probably nicknamed murder beans, at least you'll know that they could be murder beans for a whole nother reason. The next thing I'm going to talk about are not actually fish, but a type of coral. Really common and often recommended coral for new beginners into the saltwater aquarium hobby are Zoanthids or Palythoas, which are known to carry palytoxin. Now, it's impossible to know which Zoanthids or Palythoas contain it, so it's a good idea to assume that they all contain or have the ability to contain palytoxin. Now, although poisonings realistically are pretty rare with palytoxin, it can occur, especially if the coral heads are damaged or cut, so you do have to use a lot of precautions when handling Zoanthids or Palythoas. Some of the symptoms can be really rapid and be exacerbated within minutes or hours of being exposed, especially if you do have abrasions or cuts on your hand, so that the toxin can easily enter your bloodstream. Now, some of the symptoms are going to be like cold or flu symptoms, coughing, headache, difficulty breathing, things like that. You might have skin irritations like rashes or hives. You might have nausea, vomiting, abdominal cramps, blurred vision, dizziness, speech issues, or anything like that. So it's quite a wide variety of symptoms, which can make it be really hard to diagnose, especially if you've spent the day sort of doing some chores, then playing around with your aquarium, and then going out, and then visiting some friends. And all these things, if the palytoxin is there in the background and then you go to hospital without having the ability to explain what's going on, then sometimes it can be really, really difficult to actually come to that conclusion. And in really severe cases, you can actually have respiratory failure, your kidneys might shut down, and some people have even died before. So especially if you are into the reefing hobby and keeping the very common zoanthid or Palythoa, I definitely recommend using utmost caution when handling them. But if left undisturbed and if not under stress conditions, it should be okay. There's plenty of aquariums out there with heaps of zoanthid colonies in there that the owners haven't had too many issues, including myself. The next one is, of course, the most famous one when you talk to non-aquarium hobbyists, and that is the piranha. We've all seen the movies, the terrible movies of piranha attacks and sticking your hand in a piece of the Amazon and just bringing out some bare bones, as the piranhas have inevitably chewed you down to the bone. However, piranhas are a pretty common aquarium fish and actually quite well known as a bit of a boring aquarium fish, especially in parts of America. Here in Australia, you can't legally keep red belly piranhas, which are the ones that are known for being a bit more voracious. However, you can keep cousins like silver dollars and paku and things like that. So in truth, it's incredibly rare for humans to be eaten by piranhas. There's kind of a similar misconception that has been attached to sharks, where piranhas are most likely to eat injured fish or decaying fish, things like that. Not really going to attack something that's healthy and grind it down to nothing in a matter of seconds. Humans have been attacked by piranhas before, but it's usually during the dry season when there's an extreme lack of food and the piranhas are basically starving to death, where they'll nip at a human occasionally and just take little bites out of them, but it's not like what is depicted in the movies. Now, if you're still worried about your pet piranha attacking you, Dr. Herbert Axelrod, who a lot of us might be aware of with some of the names of the other aquarium fish that we keep, he aimed to put this to the test by actually wading out into the Amazon River basin in only swim trunks with a piece of raw meat on a fish hook hanging alongside him. And whilst I'm sure some onlookers were nervous for Dr. Axelrod and his future, the piranhas only ate the piece of meat and basically left him untouched. So with that experiment, I'm sure that will help a lot of us sleep at night, especially if we've been watching too many terrible movies. Next up, similar to stonefish, we have lionfish. Now, lionfish are another really beautiful saltwater aquarium fish that have some long venomous spines. Lionfish have been depicted in a lot of movies as well, and they're quite popular within the aquarium hobby due to their hardiness, their beautiful look, and how they complement reef tanks as well as fish-only tanks as well. So lionfish are equipped with some defensive spikes, which are quite beautiful, but rarely is the venom fatal to humans. If you are stung by a lionfish, usually it'll be very painful at the site of impact. You might have some headaches, some vomiting, or some difficulty breathing, but it's not really going to be something that you're going to have to be worried about your life for. In fact, most people just treat the local area with some hot water because few hospitals actually carry remedies for lionfish venom. Lionfish aren't really aggressive towards humans. As I mentioned, it's really more of a defense mechanism. So the most likely situation where you're going to be affected by lionfish venom is if you're in the tank moving rocks around or something like that, and you don't realize the lionfish is actually perched up under a rock or hiding, and he doesn't see you coming. Then if you accidentally breeze by him, he might stick his spines up and collect you in the hand, but that's really all that's going to happen. They're not going to actively seek you out, charge you down, and impale you with one of their spines. So as long as you provide them with an adequate space, you're likely to have no issues keeping lionfish, and I've actually kept one in the past as well. Next up are freshwater stingrays. Now, we all know the story of the beloved Steve Irwin and his demise at the hand of a stingray.
Have a look at this little cutie pie. This is my girl, and her name is Minibus.
But we still regularly keep stingrays, and they're really popular, especially amongst monster fish keepers. Now, stingrays possess a venomous barb at the end of their tail, which they use again as a defense mechanism. Once more, stingrays aren't really likely to charge down an owner, especially if they're being well fed and looked after. It's most likely that they'll be buried, maybe having a snooze. They don't realize that you're brushing your hand or arm past them, and they just instinctively stick their tail up, in which case you might get collected by a barb. Another way that fish keepers are injured by stingray barbs is in large tanks. If fish keepers don't collect the shed barbs from stingrays, because they, like sharks, they do shed their barbs on a monthly basis or so. Some of those barbs can hang around in the floor of your aquarium, and maybe if you're sifting around cleaning some substrate or you're walking around in a larger tank, you might accidentally impale yourself with the barb. But that's pretty much going to be the most likely cases where they're going to get you with one of those. And apart from pain at the local area, you're not really going to have too many issues with the stingray barb. Now, outside of that, stingrays are really quite docile pets and can actually be pretty hand tame, especially over the long term. So whilst they might have a history for taking down a human that used to sit on crocodiles for fun, they're not likely to result in the demise of any of your local fish keepers in the area. So I've kept stingrays before as well, and they're brilliant pets, and I'll definitely be keeping them again in the future with no concern about my own health. Now, last and very unusual are Corydoras. Now, you might even be sitting nearby to an aquarium with Corydoras as you watch this video, because they're an incredibly popular fish and they're often recommended as beginner fish. So why might I be talking about Corydoras on this video? Now, when it comes to humans, Corydoras are only really dangerous to us in a couple of ways. They do have some sharp barbs nearby to their pectoral fins, which does contain some venom, but again, it's really only going to be a local pain issue, so just try not to grab them with your hands and accidentally get impaled. If you do, you would have some pain at that area for a short period of time, but in the long term, you'll be totally fine. Although, in perhaps a good example of Darwinism, in 2016 in the Netherlands, some teenagers who were drinking and watching a show starring Johnny Knoxville were trying to reenact some of the stunts that went down on that show. In particular, a segment where Steve O swallows a live goldfish. Now, these guys in the Netherlands didn't have any goldfish left, so they drank a beer and followed it up with the chaser of a bronze Corydoras. As you can imagine, a Corydoras heading down the throat of a human got quite scared and stuck out its barbs in the man's throat. At which point he tried to eat a lot of honey to help soothe his painful throat, and eventually went to the emergency room where doctors surgically removed the Corydoras. So if your intention to keep Corydoras is to swallow them in some kind of cruel party game, I definitely wouldn't recommend that. However, if you're just going to keep them in a conventional aquarium like the rest of us, most times you'll be absolutely fine. So hopefully you like this video, something a little bit different. I had a lot of fun putting it together, and it really made me think a little bit differently about the hobby. If you've got some other aquarium related fish that you consider to be dangerous, drop them down below. Even if it's just dangerous to your relationship because they're so expensive and you keep getting in trouble for purchasing them. If you did like the video, it always helps me out to smash like, hit subscribe, and all that fun stuff. And other than that, I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.